Welcome, everyone. That tune is so catchy, I felt like I should be up dancing. I'm very excited to be here today. I think there's going to be some very interesting discussion. Our panel discussion is about the future of work and especially work after COVID and what that will look like and why you need to stay resilient to take part in the new jobs. So let's get this show on the road. First, we'd like to thank our sponsors, the province of Alberta, who's working in partnership with the Government of Canada to provide employment support programs and services. I would also like to thank Tribe, our technology provider and supporter, doing all the magic behind the scenes. And also the Talent Pool team. They were the ones that made this event happen. So thank you very much, everyone. And also to you for joining us. And I hope that you walk away with some very new ideas and perhaps some actions that you can take when you leave this webinar. So I wanted to share the process for today's event. We've prepared some questions to ask the panel, but we would encourage you to also ask questions. And you'll notice that there's a box on your screen that says type your question. It's as easy as that. Just type in your question. Magic will happen. Someone will send it to me and I can ask. Now remember that we're unable to see or hear you, so it's important that you use that box. And depending on the time and the number of questions, we may not get through them all. So what's going to happen today is we're going to have the panel discussion for the first part of this session, and then we're going to have a presentation for the ending. We do have a draw for a gift card prize at the end of the event. We will be asking you a question, which I will give you the answer maybe once or twice throughout this session so that you will know what to type in. And then you will type your answer, your name, and your email address so that we can get in touch with you to tell you you're the lucky winner. Talent Pool has developed a very comprehensive list of mental health resources that are available to you as a job seeker across the province. You know, when you think about, first of all, there was economy downturn, then there was COVID, then there was that heat, and now we have smoke. And then there's so many mosquitoes out there. On Saturday night, I think I got 24. All in all, it's been a really tough time. And so if you or someone you know needs some support, we will be putting the link for this resource list for you to download, both in the question and answer link, and also you can find it on the Talent Pool webinar resource page. And the Talent Pool job search or job fair website is the website you use to initially register for these events. So I think through these trying times, it's really wonderful to have a list of support that is available to help us through this period. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our panelists. We've highlighted their bios and companies on the PowerPoint that was running before this event, and it will run again after this event. So if you want to read up, about things, you can follow up with that. So our first presenter or panelist is Pat. And Pat describes herself as a project manager, a labor market geek, a wife, a mom. I think she lives in a house of men, and sports enthusiasts. She believes Canada can have a thriving economy with its environmentally responsible energy. I love the labor market geek part because labor market is usually something people are intimidated by. So having Pat come and share her expertise and knowledge with us is a huge bonus. Pat has been working in the field of labor market adjustment since 1992 and was instrumental in the development of the cross-sector and occupation methodology used by the petroleum LMI and others for assessing transferability and suitability of talent across industries. Thank you, Pat, for attending with us today. Now, our second panelist is Doug. And Doug has been driving business transformation across North America for over 30 years. Audiences and clients alike have praised his insightful thoughts around emerging innovation that can disrupt the status quo of any organization. Doug is a techie. He's lived the transition from low-speed telegraph circuits to high-speed fiber networks, as have I. Rather than deploying technology for the sake of technology, he helps business solve their problems. And this includes optimizing workflows and processes, improving customer experience, and creating new revenue streams. Doug presented at an event at SAIT that featured Paul Brandt, and I want to know if he had a chance to sing with Paul. Welcome.
You don't want to hear that.
Okay. And our last panelist is Debbie Masto. And Debbie has been a true supporter of job seekers for all of the years I've known her. She's volunteered at so many different events. She shares her wisdom, her expertise, and her time to help job seekers be successful in their work. You notice in the introduction that she is both a career coach and a talent acquisition professional. She is one of only 500, or she's number one recruiter in Calgary, and she was number 4 in Canada. And she's been well known in her previous position for ringing or banging the gong when she filled a position. And I want to know if you still do that when you're working from home. Do you have a gong? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. But I know we are going to be talking a little bit about technology today, and this is, thank you, Debbie, a great introduction.
Am I on now?
You are, and you have a gong.
Sorry about that.
2 gongs. Excellent, and I'm sure you get to ring them fairly often.
Yes, I sure do.
Okay, well, I look forward to hearing about some of your successes as we go through this day. Thank you. So, panel, let's start with a question. We all know that there has been something around that has made such a difference for us, and that difference is COVID. So I would like to know what might be different coming out of COVID. COVID has had a huge impact on all industries. What are some of the opportunities that have been created with COVID, and how can job seekers take advantage of this? So I'd like to start with Doug first, please.
It's around the buzz phrase sort of digital transformation, and a lot of organizations are looking at changes. And I think one of the main things that COVID has changed is I'm going to say, created an urgency around organizations looking for change. So when I think of digital transformation, I think a lot of people look at it and feel I got to run out and buy more technology. And in my experience, it's about trying to understand the problems you're trying to solve. I think of it more as innovation and require technology, maybe changing a business model, that kind of stuff. And I think some of the hurdles to that pre-COVID, where I think a lot of organizations were afraid to take risks. They were afraid to try something new. And what COVID has done is sort of taken that away in the sense that businesses had to do different things just to survive. So, I think that the reluctance to sort of put yourself out there and try something new, and that fear of it failing has gone away, and people now realize that there's a lot of it they can do, and it's not as scary as they maybe once was pre-COVID. So there's lots of opportunities, I think, for both large and small organizations to look at change, and they're willing to look at change that maybe they wouldn't have pre-COVID.
Oh, may I ask, I hear thrown around that businesses are sometimes 5 or 10 years in advance of where they would be if we didn't have COVID. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
100%. I would say that that some of them are 10 years ahead for sure, and I would say minimum a few years ahead. And again, they had no choice, and they would take risks that they wouldn't have done. I know in government organization I work with, they had a 10-year plan that they implemented in 10 days. And, it was lots of mistakes, lots of, bumps and bruises along the way. But I think I think even the most optimistic going into it were surprised at how much they were able to accomplish when they, they had no choice. Their backs against the wall kind of thing.
Right.
So.
Right. Wow. So it really shows that sometimes you just have to take risks in order to get where you need to go. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's
Um,
unfortunate that in a lot of cases it takes a crisis to do that.
right, right. Pat, do you have a response?
Absolutely. And I think I would just echo everything that Doug said. I mean, it's a little bit cliche, but I think companies and industries are trying to build back better coming out of COVID. And in a lot of ways, that's about, focusing on profitability and value. And in the energy sector, where I do a lot of my work, it's so we're seeing, not just, what used to be the measure of growth being adding production. It's more about adding value now, and that digitization
Oh,
that Doug spoke about. I mean, that's a pathway to both improving costs and business optimization. It's also a pathway to decarbonization. And so as we hear more about companies talking about, net zero goals by 2030 and 2050, and they're sorting out what the pathway to that might be. But I think, again, a lot of that has just been accelerated through COVID. We also see, so COVID has certainly been a focus. We've seen a lot of sort of social disruption as well, things around diversity and inclusion. And even
mhm,
though, the inclusion of our Indigenous peoples, Black Lives Matter, those kinds of things. And so also see more of a focus on that ESG that, has been out there for a long time, but, both investors and public are now looking for more of that from companies. And so, you know, same as what Doug has said, I think we're just seeing so much more of that coming out of COVID. And the last thing I'd say is, I think both on at the federal and provincial government level, they're interested in kickstarting our economy as well. And so we're
right.
seeing more incentive programs, different kinds of supports for governments or for companies to hire workers. And so I would certainly encourage, job seekers to pay attention to that too, because that will give some insights into where we might see some jobs being started to be generated as well.
Okay, because that was my next question. How does this trickle down for a job seeker? What does this mean for your average job seeker?
Well, I would say, not only that in terms of needing to pay attention in terms of how the economy is changing, but I think it's also about, how the industries they're interested in, how their particular occupation is changing, because you know, the jobs that are going to be generated are going to be slightly different than what they were before COVID. There maybe need some additional skills. So I think need to really pay attention to how their occupation is changing, as we accelerate this transition, because that's going to be happening. Employers are going to be doing that with their workforce, and so they're going to have to understand, how do they build skills, how do they upgrade their knowledge so that they can compete in sort of this post-COVID environment.
Okay, thank you. Debbie, how has COVID affected the work you're doing and the people that you work with?
Well, I think because I'm not maybe working at the same level as the other panelists. I'm more of boots on the ground girl, and so what I'm experiencing is a little bit different than what they are. From that, I saw at the beginning of COVID that everybody was on board to get, all everything moved online so that all their people could, as many people as they could get working from home. So we saw that happening for, like months and months and months, and all these policies in HR getting built around how do we have these remote workforces. And they were saying, at one point they were saying, we're going to have workers across Canada even though our operations are here, and this is going to broaden the pool of people we have working. And you fast forward while things are now opening up, and all I'm hearing from my clients is, yeah, no, they've got to come in the office. And so where I thought we were headed is not where we're headed at all. And I think that the people who were working at home, it worked for some people, didn't work as well for others. It's even something like this heat wave that you talked about. And a lot of people in Calgary don't have central air. And so all of a sudden it looks pretty appealing to go into an air conditioned office. So we had, I thought it was really interesting the amount of time and resources that have been spent in this last year putting together these remote workforce plans, only for it to all fizzle at the end. And I even saw it transform to, we're going to do like a hybrid model where people can work from home a couple days a week, but then they'll come into the office a couple days a week, to the whole thing being scrapped now. I don't even, I would say over 90% of my clients now, it's come into the office. It's not a work from home. So where I thought things were going to be really different, I don't see that at all. I do see the workforce in oil and gas is where I've spent most of my time. That's really shrinking, and the expectations of employers on the employees to do more has increased significantly. So where we usually see that during those massive layoffs where somebody has to take on the role of 2 or 3 people. That's actually the norm now, where we're seeing these roles where they're asking for, like, it's mind blowing, and the clients are not willing to look at the transferable skills, or people might be missing certain pieces that they need to get trained on. They're just not sold that they would rather keep looking for that unicorn than settle.
Oh my gosh, that is such bad news. Go away,
God.
Debbie, go away.
It's not all bad news, because then you have to remember, not everybody wants to work from home, and a lot of people are glad that things are opening up to get back at it. But I even know of a lady who works for Alberta Health Services. She was doing part-time, and they came to her and said that's not even going to work for them anymore, that they want full-time, got to come into the office, and it is what it is. But I don't see, and then maybe it's just my clients, I don't know. That's what I'm seeing though.
That's interesting. Okay. Well, I have heard of people that have moved out of city, say in Ontario, moved out of Toronto, and then all of a sudden they have to start going back in the office, and it's now, an hour and a half commute. So, okay. Oh. Well, we have a question from Bernadine. Do you think the public was more forgiving of problems with the tech push processes because we were in a pandemic? That's an interesting question. Doug, do you have any thoughts about that?
Sorry, can you say that again, Lynn?
I think yes. Do you think that we were more forgiving of some of the technology problems that came up as we were switching because we were in a crisis? So if it happened previously, we'd all be complaining about it?
I think I'm pretty sure that that's the case. I'm sure there was a lot of cussing and swearing going on when people started to try and use the new technology. But I think, sort of back to what I was saying at the beginning was I think people were more willing to try stuff, and if it didn't
Right.
fail, or pardon me, if it didn't work, it was like, okay, I'll try something else. And I think, yes, there's a level of frustration with that, but I think, being backed into that corner allowed people to try things that maybe they wouldn't have tried before.
Right. So in some ways, COVID, even though there's lots of downsides to it, there are some positive outcomes from having had this experience. Okay, my next question is actually, Debbie, I wonder if you could share some of your success stories of clients who've been able to pivot or change careers during this period of time.
Well, I absolutely love this, talking about people that I know that have successfully done this. And I mean, when I was trying to think of ideas of people who have successfully transformed or rebranded themselves, it was actually quite shocking how long my list was of people that I know that have done this.
Oh,
But what I found so interesting is that there's some people that were able to transform themselves from, and mostly it was oil and gas people, into tech. There were some people that were able to do it within a few months, but there were others that it took quite a bit longer. And when I mean quite a bit longer, I mean years. It took them years. But then I started to really start thinking about this, and it was kind of the same question that I used to get asked when oil was at $100 a barrel, is like, how do we rebrand ourselves and get into oil and gas? And it's actually quite similar. The processes are very similar. And when I look at, why do I think that some people it's taking the 5 years versus other people that can do it within a few months? It's the people that had a plan of how to rebrand themselves and then followed through with the plan, executed it, and then landed these new roles. And when you look back on it, on having these plans, the other people that have struggled and that took, like one guy that I know, it took almost 5 years. One of the reasons that it took that long was that they had a hard time letting go of what they had, what they were, maybe. So it was, I'm a drilling engineer, for instance, and that's where I've spent 15 years of my career. And to let that go and go, now I am an analyst in a tech company. It takes a lot. You have to be convinced that path is over. There's one fella, though, that did exceptionally well that comes to mind, and he was an engineer in oil and gas. But what he did was he started off by going, okay, if my industry is hiring, which industries are? And so we had this scorecard that he put together, and it came up with tech. And then from that, he goes, okay, so where do I fit in with tech? So he took the skills of job postings in tech, because he knew he didn't want to be a programmer. So he was like, is there really room for me in tech? So he took job descriptions. Then what he did was put up his skills against those job descriptions and went, oh, my new title is I think it's called a product manager. That's what I am. So he started using terminology and the wording that the tech companies use right from the get-go. And from that, he built out his target list. But he actually, his name's Kieran, he actually did a blog of his process, and he even posts his spreadsheets. You know what I can do, Lynn, is I can send you his blog link that you can share with everybody. They can go on for free and look, but he details his step-by-step process of how he was able to go from one industry to the other. But one other thing, I'll wrap it up. But one other thing is that I've noticed that a lot of people that make that transition, the first job, including Karen's, by the way, but the first thing is that oh, sorry, I was reading the thing and I forgot what I was going to say now. Oh, how
He
embarrassing.
started at an entry-level job?
Oh,
Is that what
no,
you're going to say?
no, I wasn't. That they make an oops in the beginning. So they take the
Ah,
first job and it seems to last like 3 months or so. And then they're like, oops. And then they move to another job.
ah,
So I don't know what the issue is with that first job or what happened for a lot of these guys, but you see it quite often where they
ah,
hit it and they get in somewhere and then they're making a move in a short amount of time. But anyways, there are, I think the key for everybody is to go, where do I fit in? What are the
right.
kinds of companies that are hiring? What are the terminology they're using? And then network your way in that way. And I will send you that link for Karen's blog so you can share that.
Okay, perhaps you could put it in our chat and then we could share
Okay.
it through our other. Thank you. Okay, we have John has a question from the panel's perspective. What jobs or industries are currently hiring? Our labor market geek.
Well, I think there's two things. One is about, sorry, I just had a glitch in my computer stuff. So I see two things. There is some hiring that's happening at an industry level. And so, there we are seeing increased demand around some of the renewables. Certainly, I think coming back from COVID, we're seeing increased demand related to hospitality. There are certain sectors like hospitality that just can't find enough people. On the oil
Right.
and gas side of things, is we're seeing demand for oil and gas, which people weren't necessarily expecting it would come back as quickly. We are seeing field jobs come back, and some of those field operators, so the oil field services sectors, having difficulties finding people. So there's some of the areas. But I think, and probably Doug can speak to this better, but because of that digital transformation, I see all kinds of industries trying to hire for those digital skills. And anything from, the instrumentation techs or the engineers that would be involved in, what has to happen in terms of an installation of technology side of things, right through those programmers. And that's just happening throughout the different sectors. Debbie mentioned product managers, and I'm certainly hearing more about that in terms of being an in-demand job. So her example of how, and taking somebody who is from outside of that sector and rebranding themselves, is a really good example. So I think that certainly the digital across industries is a big part of it, but it's not just the programmers needing to look at all the other things that are involved in that digital transformation, and I'm sure Doug has something more to add to that.
Yeah, I think what's interesting is in my circle, I'm kind of known as the technology guy, and I think a lot of people come to me and say, I feel like I'm going to get left behind because I'm not tech savvy. And I think the people that are going to get left behind are the ones that aren't willing to do what Debbie just described in terms of try new things. And then, yes, definitely there's opportunities in programming and data analytics and some of these really deep science ones. But I think there's other, like, it's interesting, Debbie made the comment about a product manager. where, I envision that as sort of a combination of what used to be a project manager, a product owner, and a customer experience person into a single role. I think another opportunity is going to be what I'm going to call data visualization. That as more and more of this data, is at our fingertips, you get a spreadsheet that has tens of thousands of data points in it, and there's a skill set required to draw out the information. So, as a geologist, for example, they have all these data points that mean something to them. There's an opportunity to say, how do I take the highlights and put it on a single page so that the business owner can say, oh, now I understand what those data points are. And so it's not just about, becoming a programmer or, diving into it. I think it's a basic knowledge of what's possible with digital and then applying that in different ways is, where I really think a lot of opportunities are going to come in the future.
Okay.
If I could just add a couple of other things. Sorry, let me in there. A couple of other things that come to mind around sort of the whole ESG and decarbonization. Like it's not enough. And when I talked about creating value, it's not enough anymore just to say we're doing this. We're improving in this way. We're creating more value. Companies are going to have to measure that, and it's going to have to be verified. There's going to have to be evidence that companies are all making those changes in terms of creating value, and that's starting to create different kinds of jobs as well. I would also recommend people pay attention to what's happening in the regulatory environment that governs the industry that they work in or are interested in, because when regulations change or shift, that tends to mean industry has to do something differently, and that too can generate jobs. Sorry, Deb, I cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. I just wanted to say if I want a plug for one of my clients that I don't know if everybody knows this, but a company there's I believe it's Canada's largest wind farm is being built in Cypress Hills, and my client is a company called Maztec. They were awarded it's a $200 million project. It'll take it's work for 2 years to construct this wind farm. They're looking for everything from laborers to project managers to so we were talking earlier about, like, I know we were talking about going into tech, but we were also talking about the more green energy or renewables, and they're looking for hundreds of people, and it's to start next month. So you want to talk about jobs now, and then if you want to take it one step further and you go, well, Debbie, how would I get noticed for one of these jobs versus the next guy? Because there are a lot of people that would be interested in these positions, I would think. And I would say to you, if you have a way that you could have an address close by that area that you could be using on your resume and documents to apply, because they're also we're used to, when we work in oil and gas, we're used to these nice big fancy camps, and they're flying us in and out, and we get to go home every other weekend. This is a lot different. What this role would look like, and I don't know because I'm not working these specific roles, but is that they are going to want to hire as many local people as they possibly can. So if I've got a friend who's a welder, and he's got a big trailer that he hooks up to his truck, and he's goes wherever the work is. So he's very mobile. So if there's something like that you could do, and you go, well, it's not ideal living out of my trailer for the next 2 years, but it gets me working and it looks like I'm local. that's how I would do it. And the other thing is, when you're talking about where are the jobs, I just had a friend call me last week. She works for a telecommunications company that's here in Calgary. They not find workers, and it's laborers that they're looking for as well. And they're the people that are putting in the TELUS and I'm not a tech person, so please forgive me, but they put in the fiber optics, or I don't know, something. They need trenches dug,
Yeah.
going into the houses. And she said that they've never had difficulty hiring ever, and they cannot find enough people. And for that one, they're requiring a driver's license, and it is a labor job. But I sit there and I go, geez, for all the people, some of these young people coming out of high school, or that need to get working. I mean, it's something, right? So it's hard to believe that these places just cannot find the people. But
Right.
I do believe that there's a lot of jobs out there.
Okay, thank you. Employers are asking for digital skills at all level, from admin to management. However, I rarely hear specifics about what they want. What insight can you provide? So when we say we need to be digitally savvy, what does that mean as an individual? What do they need to upskill with? Any comments? Answers?
I'll take a crack, Lynn. When I think of digital skills, I think it's a basic understanding of what's possible. And I think, like when I work with clients, what I try to do is I have a section, I call it demystifying technology, because I think when a lot of people hear the terms and the acronyms, it seems so scary and overwhelming. And really all we're trying to do is get people to understand, oh, that's what we mean by Internet of Things, or that's what we mean by machine learning. And then at the end of the day, they don't need to understand how it's done. So, how do the programmers actually make GPS show up on a map? It's understand that, oh, it's possible. I don't need to know how to do it. I can figure out a way that I can optimize a process by doing that. And then I give it to the people that are way smarter than me that, actually write the code and make it happen. And so to me, digital literacy is just a high level understanding, something as simple as Google it and get a paragraph of what the Internet of Things is. And okay, I think most people realize it's not, don't get me wrong, it's complicated and the people that do it are very smart, but a high level understanding, just to say, I can apply that. That's a problem I have in the process that I have today. I could use technology to solve that.
So I think for most job seekers, you do want to upskill things like Microsoft Office Suite, so that is just something everybody needs and is easily done. And my suggestion to the person who asked this is, you need to look at what type of work are you looking for. Is there a particular program that's being asked for? And then that's where you have to upskill. So I think what Doug has said, having an understanding, what is machine learning? What is artificial intelligence? Really understanding that is important, but then thinking about, okay, I'm interested in this job, therefore I need to upskill in this area. And there are places, the Calgary Public Library, I'm sure the other, Edmonton Public Library, they all offer free online courses. So there's lots of places you can find free. You don't always have to pay for skills.
Mm-hmm.
Did anybody else
Lynn,
like to jump into that?
Sure. I would just say in some cases, it's just as basic as feeling comfortable using devices, because, part of this transformation is moving away from pen and paper, sort of real-time data entry. So you're out in the field and you're, using a tablet or using your phone to enter data. Even your timesheets are, digitized that
Yes.
way. And so, I think your point is well taken in terms of, what is the occupation and what's likely to be digital skills required in order to do that job. And to Doug's point, it's not necessarily programming. It may be
Yes.
as simple as understanding how is that world being digitized and how will it impact my occupation, all across the different occupations and job families.
And even having the experience of how does Zoom work? How do these video conferencing tools work? So that when you do become employed, if you need to use them, you already have that basis. So it's a lot of prep work, which actually leads into the next question that someone has. Which I don't, it's about how much artificial intelligence tracking is involved in pre-screening of job applicants. So the applicant tracking system. Really, the world of looking for work has changed so much because of technology. Would anyone like to talk a little bit about that?
I can talk about this because this is right up my alley. I don't think it's used even 1/10 as much as what people think it's used. So I think that, I can speak. When I was at Suncor, we used the software a lot because we were getting 2,000 applicants for every job that we were posting. But when I was at Synovus, when I was at Devon, we did not use it. So I think I think at the end of the day, the issue that we were having as recruiters is the software just was not that great, and so it was missing a lot of people that we typically would have been interested in, or that we just went, well, is it really this fair? Like, we push a button, our computer tells us, these are the top candidates, and our system was on a bullseye system, so it would say this guy's like bullseye and this lady's bullseye. So we would go through and it was like wrong probably half the time until we had our six. So out of 2,000 resumes, maybe 12 would actually get eyes on them. I don't know if that's still the case. But I don't think it gets used nearly as much as what people think. So I think people think it gets used a lot, but in the reality is that it's still pretty old school, and you do get eyes, at least here in Calgary, on your resume. People were still screening by the old school way.
Okay. So in fact, yes, Pat.
I was just going to sort of reinforce something that Debbie said earlier about one of her, in regards to one of her transition stories, is it's also about learning the language of the industry you want to go into, or the position that you want to go into, and then using that as well in order to, because that's what a lot of those screening mechanisms are built on. And so, in that process of translating your skills and your knowledge into the language of the position or the industry that you're going into, and really understanding that whole exercise is just, key in terms of this sort of economy anyways. And there's huge value in that, learning and knowing and using the language of the new industry or the position that you want to go in. And that will help on that, job search side of things too, and responding to job postings.
So how do
Need
I
to
know what
research.
industry?
I just want to
You're going
add
to answer my
here
question.
the research, because if you're doing research ahead of time, the other thing you can do is get a list of companies that like to hire people from your industry into maybe tech, let's say. So for instance, I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, but have you guys noticed how much Amazon loves the oil and gas engineers, especially if they've got an MBA? Go look at all their, I think they're called branch managers or something. Go look at them. They're all ex oil and gas guys that, or ladies that all, and a lot of them have their MBAs. And so when we start looking at the patterns of the companies, like, you hear that there's some companies out there that don't want the oil and gas people. And if you're an oil and gas person, that's not somewhere you want to waste a lot of time then if they're not hiring. But I'm telling you that there are tons of companies out there that actually love the oil and gas people. And when we talk about some of these tech companies, there's a lot of oil and gas tech companies. One that comes to mind is here in Calgary called Ambient. And they're local and they're a growing company. And I'm sure there's tons of other ones as well. But looking at the companies that have taken people from the oil and gas and have said, oh yeah, that's going to fit here, and see. But a lot of times too, what I'm noticing is when I'm looking at these people's background is that they've also upgraded their skills. So they've either taken the courses at Bow Valley, SAIT. There's a whole bunch of different ones. And I'm not well rehearsed in this area, but Lynn, you probably know better. All these different programs that are helping people upskill, and some of them are even free. So some they pay for, some are free. But looking at going back on the people's profiles and going, okay, I can see they made a move in this year, then going down to their education. And I'm talking about looking on LinkedIn, obviously, but then going down and go, did they take any courses to get them there? And then what courses did they take to help them launch this new career? And then taking a look and saying, is this for me? Is this something that I could be doing?
Good advice. Research, research, research. It's so important. So a question is, does our previous experience matter when moving into a new job sector, or is it really all about those skills?
Well, I think sometimes it's beyond skills. I mean, skills obviously are important, but also I think I wouldn't discard your previous experience. That's part of you. That's you're bringing to the table. Not only sometimes it's an understanding of how an industry works. So just sort of leveraging what Debbie was saying about, tech companies that are hiring from the oil and gas industry. Well, part of what those oil and gas workers bring to the table is context. They know how the industry works. They know, what some of the challenges are, what's been tried before, that kind of stuff. And so being able to provide that context in addition to upskilling and some maybe new technical skills, it's that package that makes them attractive to a new industry, or a company that is working in the sector that you come from, because you can bring that context. So again, I think it's all about where you came from and where you want to go, and that research piece to understand what's the value beyond, my skill that I'm bringing to the table, and to be able to speak to that in your resume, in your covering letter, when you're networking, all of that kind of stuff.
You know what's really interesting about this question is that I've always been a big believer that you put all your education and your experience, even if you're only putting one or two lines to describe it, and that was until I was actually doing a presentation with a recruiter from Canadian Natural, and it was to a group of people that had just re uh, like they had taken a new course. So it was people that had maybe a master's degree in engineering, and but then were becoming for this thing they were becoming power engineers. And so I said to them, you know, it's really relevant experience to have on your. And the guy from Canadian Natural said no, he disagreed with me. He said that it confuses the story when they get the resume, and
Right.
so when they look at it they go, well, does he want to be an engineer or does he want to be a power engineer, which if you're not familiar, these are two totally different jobs.
Right.
And so he said that he would not have that on his resume, and the experience he would have listed on there, because I said, well, how I was always under the impression is that how they come up with how many holidays you're going to get and your pay and is based on your total years of experience. And he was like, no, that's not how it works anymore. That it is, if they have a salary range for a new grad, they don't care that you have 20 years of experience doing something else. So he said, unless it adds to your story and tells the story of why you're going into this next, he said, you leave it off.
So, so true. Really, we have to target our resume for what the employer cares about and really what adds value. And so, yeah, thank you for adding that, because that certainly is the uh, is what I tell people. Leave it off if it doesn't add value, you say.
Wow. I had
Okay.
no idea.
Well, I have a question about, does anyone know about the future of administrative type of work? Are there good numbers about where that's going? Will it be at home work? Certainly with AI, will that really put administrative people out of business? Is there any thoughts about that? No?
I can speak about this. I know that if you're open, especially to contract work right now, it seems that a lot of companies are doing what I call the try before you buy. So
Right.
come in, see if this is a fit for you and for me. There's actually some exciting companies out there. Like one that comes to mind is one of my clients called Boringer, and I know that they're looking for someone. Their plant, they manufacture crushers for the mining companies. They're planning on doubling in size over the next year, or more than doubling in size. And their plant is actually in Innisfail, but all the office folks live here in Calgary, or most of them, and they don't have offices here, so they all work remotely. I know they were going to be looking for an office manager soon, but I think a lot of these places, what they want to do first is bring you in, give you a try, and see
Right.
how does this look and how is this going to work, and then go. So if you open yourself up to these opportunities, a lot of them can turn into a permanent role. And it gives you the opportunity too to go, is this place right for me? A lot of people think, oh, uh, I'm thinking of, I was doing a lot of recruiting in the transportation industry last year, and it's a different world. when you're not used to it and you go to this, it's different. And so for a lot of people where they think, oh, I'm going to get into tech and it's going to be like working at Google, and then they get in there and it's like, oh, this is like every other job. It's not like, where's the foosball table and the fire pole? Like there, it's not like that. And so all of a sudden it's not really what you thought. And it gives you a good opportunity to try these things out.
Right.
So partnering up with some of these staffing agencies that do the temporary jobs in those areas is, I think, a really good idea.
Thank you. And that's going to lead us to kind of the last question I have. Joanne mentioned if you want to check your question and answer page. She said, for people who are interested in tech, Rainforest Alberta meets every Wednesday in Calgary. It's online for now. And you can connect with other people there. And also Edmonton has a chapter. But you might check that out. And so my last question really is, what do you think people's next steps are? Are there organizations they should join? Are there certain resources they should be following? Doug, do you mind starting?
So from my perspective is if I think of people that have, years of experience and can't find something there, is what I would encourage them to do is to think back when you were in those roles. What were some of the frustrations in terms of getting your job done? And look for opportunities around those situations. So as we said at the very beginning, COVID has created this environment where organizations are more willing to look at innovation than ever before. And, we've all had those jobs where we've sat there and, it's sort of the question around administration. If you're copying and pasting cells from one spreadsheet to another, that's not a lot of value. If you're the one that takes the final product and turns that into some valuable information, that's where the value is, and that's what I would focus on. So I think there's opportunities out there to try and solve some of those painful process problems that people would be willing to look at that they never have before. And we've all seen them. We all know where they are. That's where I would be out focusing, trying to talk to people in that area as an opportunity.
Thank you. Pat?
Yeah, I think I would just echo, what Doug says, that it's about, and as hard as it can be, and Debbie mentioned this before too, it's about leaving the job title behind and really understanding and being able to communicate about the value that you can provide to a company or an organization. And that can take some dissecting of your roles and a lot of introspection and that kind of stuff, but it's about the value that you're offering, and that's sort of a key exercise.
And I always think value to employer is you make them money, you save them money, or you save them time, which actually saves them money in the long run. But I think if you think about that, use that lens to think about what you previously did, I think you're quite far ahead. Debbie, any last words?
I think I would just go with the do your research, look at what other people have done and how they've done it, and then tweak it so you're comfortable in that space, and come up with a solid project plan of how you're going to get there. Because the more organized you are and the more that you can follow your project plan, it's going to keep you focused, and so that you can complete this on time and on budget, which is what we all want to see happening.
Thank you. So thank you so much, panelists. I've learned something today, and so I'm hoping that everyone else out there has. We appreciate both your time and your expertise sharing with us. And so we wish you well. Be safe. Don't get caught up in any smoke anywhere. Okay, so now we are now going to move to our second part of this program, which is a presentation by Landis. And she has held an HR leadership role in entrepreneurship, manufacturing, health services, technology, and financial service sectors. In 2017, Landis has She won the Community Champion Award through contributions with the CPHR, which is the Human Resources Association in Calgary. It's the third largest HR association in Canada, representing over 6,000 members. So it shows that she's pretty hot stuff. And I enjoy seeing the words that people use to describe themselves. And so when I went on her LinkedIn, she said she was an experienced HR professional, an engaging instructor, an energetic facilitator. She's an evoking speaker. And I'm really happy to have Landis here today to share her both time and her knowledge. So thank you. And I'm going to leave it to you now.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. Wondering if we can get my presentation ready to roll. Thank you. So today I want to share 2 winning strategies. Whether you're in job search or you like to call it career development, I hope by the end of the presentation you'll have thought about these 2 strategies. We could talk about many, but I wanted to focus this just on 2 to give you some new techniques, new things to consider that will complement what the panelists shared with you this morning. So first of all, I would like us to focus on searching with a purpose. And this will provide you with an opportunity to stay engaged in your job search and to be relevant in your job search. Developing a competency of adaptability is something that is required in the workplace, post-COVID particularly. What does competency mean? It's applying knowledge or applying skills in order to be successful in the workplace. So throughout the next 40 minutes, we're going to be talking about both of these 2 strategies. And as I say, hoping to give you some techniques of how to internalize these, how to reflect on your job search and where to take it. So the first strategy, as I said, is purpose. And I'm just going to be quiet for a moment and have you read this quote that I think is so relevant. And as you reflect on this quote, I'd like you to think about your job search. What are your values? And what are you passionate about? What's important to you? Those are big questions that you should be answering as you engage in job search. Once you've got those questions answered, then focus on your job search and look for jobs that align with your values and your passion. Dig deeper into those jobs that you're interested in to find out what certifications, what experience, skills, competencies are being asked and requested. And then look at yourself. How are you proceeding on that path? Now that we've got an overview, let's delve into some specifics. Alignment, critical for both your professional and your personal life. Be purposeful with both of these particular areas of your life and strive for alignment you'll find you are much happier when your job aligns with your own personal values. Now is a great time when you're entering the workforce or re-entering the workforce to have that purpose and intention to embrace the new way that we are doing work and living life. Reaching that alignment will give you excitement, engagement, and encourage you to grow. As you are thinking about alignment, there's some factors that I'd like to focus you on. First of all, look at what's happening externally. And when I talk about external, I'm referring to global, what's happening across the world in regard to the area that you are looking for jobs. What's happening nationally? And then start to focus on locally. What industry-specific trends are being discussed, are being talked about, are being requested? And secondly, internally. And when I talk about internal, I'm asking you to look at specific organizations that you've targeted and that you find of interest and might like to work for, but as well, look at yourself. Assess what you've lived so far. Assess your work experience. All of those particular areas will help you become more purposeful in your job search. Let's focus on the external first. So if we look at the workplace of today, 3 factors that I want to talk about. One is the hybrid workplace. We've heard about this, but think about what that means. It means that you have got to be flexible. You might be expected to come to work. You might be expected to work from home. You might be expected to do a combination of both of those. And we may find that there could be another wave of COVID. So we may have to pivot. All of those things are affecting the workplace of today. What does that mean for you? It requires you to be agile. You're going to have to respond quickly. Second, you've got to be flexible. One thing that you should have learned that we are still learning from the workplace that we are developing as we go forward is that we've got to be able to be flexible. The way we did things before is not the way that things are going to continue on a go-forward basis. Secondly, the workplace is reorganizing how work is done. This is called job design. They, in fact, are looking at more project-based work. Before COVID, employees were quite siloed in the work that they were expected to do. Now we're looking more at projects and your involvement in those projects. What does that require of you? Well, you need to really hone your team skills. Because remember, you're going to be working from home or from the workplace or a combination, in that some of the folks you're going to work with might be at home the day you're back in the office. So you're going to have to learn how to develop different team skills. Continue to develop your technical skills. And I'm going to use a term here called upskilling, which I'll talk about in a few slides. Employers are really looking at performance management metrics because not everyone is going to be in the workplace. They're not going to be able to see people watch their performance. Employers are looking to measure how their employees are being productive. As a job seeker for yourself, you need to be thinking about, how do I communicate? How do I let people know what I'm doing? Secondly, how do I suggest improvements as we're working in this hybrid workplace? And third, are you understanding how the organization is going to be measuring the performance? So again, being agile, being able to cope with all of these changes that are occurring and will continue to occur, and then being flexible are both actions that I highly recommend that you consider. As an aside, I encourage you to think about the external factors and how these are affecting your personal life as well. Because your personal life does affect how you show up for your professional life. So now let's turn to the internal factors. How comfortable are you with technology? Are you continuing to play with the technology? There's new software out there. I invite you and encourage you to try some of the new free software that's out there, just to increase your skill set in how to be comfortable with technology. You won't be expected to know all the new technologies that are out there, but it's that comfort level. It's that adaptability to be able to work with technology. If you're using Excel, for example, are you comfortable with using the more advanced functions of Excel? Play around. Think about, where can you go for assistance if you're not comfortable with technology? That's part of you being resourceful. Regarding resourcefulness, where are you going for your information? Have 3 or 4 sources that you check, not just one. Be productive. Meet those deadlines. Manage your work and limit the creep that's going into your personal life. Through COVID, we all have been challenged mentally. And it's important for us to be able to have some type of distancing, so that when you land your job, you are working full and engaged during the workday, but that you in fact are delegating important personal time throughout the day or at the end of the day, whatever works for you. And lastly, communication. Communication skills have got to be different. We have to show initiative. We've got to tell people what we're doing. They may not see. They may not understand. So show your initiative and provide feedback. As a job seeker, you should continually be investing in your self-development. This never stops. And I encourage you to think about your human skills, your interpersonal skills, and what you are developing in those skills. How are your coping skills? How do you deal with difficult conversations? How do you ask for help? All of those fall into the category of human skills or interpersonal skills. So you should be investing in you and looking at opportunities out there to develop those human skills. Also, your technical skills. Irregardless of the area that you would like to work in, how are you developing your technical skills? How are you staying current? It's a challenge in the days that we live in right now. Talent Pool has provided the Resilient Job Seeker Resource List. It's a great resource, and I recommend that you reference this resource. It's organized by geographic area, and it provides resources for your personal life. Check it out. Use those resources. Because as I've said, what happens in your personal life affects what goes on in your professional life. Also, check out post-secondary institutions. A number of the post-secondary institutions are offering more online courses and short courses so that it is more applicable and appropriate for the times that we're living in. And focus on upskilling or reskilling. So what does upskilling mean? It means learning new skills for the workplace of today. Look at the area that you would like to focus on your job search. Look at those job postings. What competencies are being asked for? What do you think would be helpful in those jobs? And look for opportunities to increase your knowledge and your comfort level in those competencies. Assess what you are missing and be prepared to spend time on increasing your skills. Reskilling is when you are working on an existing skill, but you add more technology to that skill. So this is where you use the tools that are out there. So check to see what opportunities there are for reskilling an existing skill that you already have. If you're looking to transfer, you've been spending your life in engineering and you want to look at moving into a different functional area, do your research. Check to see what the postings are asking for. Have a look and see what are the agencies that are out there asking for in those skills. And then start to spend time on you. This self-development is critical to make us cope or help us to cope in the world of today. As a job seeker, don't just be thinking about, I've always worked in this particular area. I can only look for work in that particular area, that particular sector. I challenge you to be open. Consider new jobs that are coming into the workplace now. And consider whether you might want to look at a switch. Secondly, you might want to change your job path altogether. When you've sat back and thought about it through your job search, you've decided, I don't know, I think I've lost interest in this particular area, or my passion isn't there anymore. So don't just feel that you can only look in the areas that you've always worked. Really open yourself up to other opportunities. And you do that in two ways. Looking at the new jobs that are requested or being sought, and then secondly, thinking about changing your career path. Become more resilient. It's a word that's used a lot. What does it mean? How do I do it? 4 tips I'd like to pass along to you. 1, really focus, be purposeful. What motivates you? What do you want to bring to a workplace? What do you want that workplace to offer you? And then what motivates you in regard to rewards in that workplace? As you're going through job search, set priorities for each workday. This will give you focus. And it'll help balance your personal life, your social life, emotional, as well as your mental health. Make plans every day to achieve some of those priorities. And then integrate the things that really matter in your professional life and your personal life as you're doing job search. And I encourage this each workday. So, in summary, I've highlighted 4 areas: select, research, update, and develop. To follow purposeful job search, identify some companies that you might be interested in working and follow them on social media. Also, go to your LinkedIn profile. Sorry, not your profile, but your LinkedIn account, and check to see if you happen to know anyone that works at those particular organizations. See if you can have conversation with them to talk about what is the culture really like at this particular organization. Second, research. Job titles are changing. So look to see what is presently being requested. See if you can get into the web page of the particular organization that you're interested in. Look at the names, the titles that jobs are called. Look at the technical skills that are being asked for. And then the transfer skills that you have. Don't underestimate your transfer skills. Just ensure that you are clear about how those transfer skills will add value to the particular job that you're looking for or hoping to apply. Third is update your brand. What is your brand? How do you show your brand? It's through your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn profile, and getting you ready for those interview questions. Ensure that you are aligning whatever your purpose is with the job that you are applying for in your resume. Be specific. Show exactly how you can bring value to that particular opportunity. Your cover letter is a chance for you to show your personality. So share stories of how you can illustrate and demonstrate that you in fact have had experience in some of the responsibilities that the company is looking for. And in your LinkedIn profile, ensure that it is up to date, but also ensure that you're active. Don't not follow people. Follow groups. This is all about leading into the last tip that I've provided, and that's develop your network. Job search is not done individually. It's done through a community. So reach out and have conversations. Is it uncomfortable to make that first reach out? Absolutely it is. But engage in it. Be safe with your first one that you might do. Experiment with someone you know who's in that particular profession. Reach out, have conversation. When you gain confidence, then reach out through your LinkedIn profile Not everyone's going to have time to respond. So reach out to 5 people maybe every week so that you can start to have conversation which will lead into connection. And if given the opportunity, I really encourage you to think about mentorship. It's important no matter where you are in your job search and no matter where you are in your experience level of working. You can learn a lot in those mentorship relationships. And while you are on job search, it's great to have mentors that might be in the area that you are looking for a job, but also that might be working in the area, the geographic area that you're looking to apply for an opportunity. So with that, I'd like to move now into the second strategy that I'd like to focus on, and that's adaptability. So again, I invite you to have a read of this quote. And I invite you, as we're thinking about adaptability, how open are you to change? And let's be honest. Everyone says, oh, I can handle change. But I want to talk a little bit this morning about where are you in your change skills? This supports adaptability, and this is what employers are looking for in the workplace of today. A question I'd like to pose to you is, how are you approaching your job search differently now than pre-COVID? Another question, how are you getting ready for the different stages of job search now compared to how you did it previously? So adaptability, as I have mentioned, is a competency that is really sought by employers of today. So I'd like us to focus on yourself and some questions that I want you to think about as you're going through your job search. And I want you to think about 2 different extremes. One is, how do you respond positively to a change? And then how do you respond negatively? We all do both. Let's look at the positive first. What kind of change in the workplace have you positively accepted? And why did you accept that change positively? Think about that as you are developing your competency in adaptability. Share those stories in your resume, in your cover letter, in your interview, in your conversations. On the other hand, let's focus on the negative response. What kind of change did you push back on? You weren't all that keen on it. And ask yourself the question, why? Why did I perceive that change negatively? As we work through change and an assessment of ourselves, a flow that I like to follow, and you might find helpful, is be aware of how you respond to change. And then think about, how do others perceive your response? So this requires you to really do some assessment about, how do I show people that I am supporting a change? How am I showing that I'm not understanding the change? So I'm putting up a bit of a resistance. And then moving to display. How are you illustrating to people in the workplace that you are willing to get behind this change and to influence other people in the organization? Maybe influence your customers, because maybe this change affects them. So I challenge you to think both from a how do you respond positively as well as how do you respond negatively. And we've got to be aware of those. Moving into a question I'd like to pose again is, how do you adjust to new opportunities? How do you accept challenges? In a 2022 Skills Outlook in World Economic Forum, they've identified as adaptability as one of the top skills. And as I've been talking to employers, they are wanting to see how prospective employees are using adaptability in these three areas: in creativity, critical thinking, and complex problem solving. So as you are engaged in job search, think about how you have demonstrated finding new solutions to problems. This will provide examples for your creativity when you're talking, when you are preparing your resume. In your interview, you can share some of those examples. Critical thinking: how do you work with team members to find the facts? Employers are looking for people who don't just jump in to tasks. They are looking for people who, first of all, check the facts. Then think about the problem in the particular organization, and then how to implement solutions. Complex problem solving: how do you change when a problem is presented from the supplier or a client or a team member? How have you demonstrated your openness to looking at different ways of solving problems, or of bringing a team in to solve those particular problems? So some tips that I'd like to share with you and to have you think about is, how are you developing your communication skills? And communication, I'm focusing on three things. One is, how are you speaking? So orally. Second, how are you showing yourself? Your body language. And third, how are your writing skills? All of these skills can continually be developed. And in the world that we're moving to now, communication is even more important. Companies are looking for change agents. What does that mean? It means people who are working in the organization that will accept a change and help move the organization to integrating that change. We all can play a role with that. It is not just the president who is a change agent. Change agents are throughout the organization, and this is something that we develop through our communication skills. Second tip is to look at your interpersonal skills and to think about, what have you done in organizations as an individual contributor? So what tasks have you been assigned that you completed? And be specific when you're sharing these. What about what skills you've used When you've worked as a team, come up with examples of different interpersonal skills you have used when working in a team. Highlight when you've been working with the senior leaders in previous positions, how you communicated with them, how you interacted with them. And then make sure you think about how you've interacted with customers and with clients. We all have had difficult customers and clients. Think of examples of how you have been open to dealing with those difficult clients. How have you worked with that client? It doesn't always mean that we've won the client over, but be willing to share how you in fact have tackled the problem and how you worked through it in your organization. Third, think about your problem-solving skills. This is important. And be specific on sharing stories of how you've handled problem solving in the workplace. It doesn't matter the position that you've held. Share how you have approached problems. And then share those stories in your cover letter, if that's what's been asked for, in conversations with people, and in the interview. Next, talk about your thinking skills. Again, a trait that is sought in the workplace of today. Share how you have thought through problems or issues that have arisen in your previous work experience. And then highlight how, applying your thinking skills, you've come up with a new idea, or you thought that a different way of doing that task would be beneficial to the organization. Don't just narrow yourself to your technical skill. Also think about your interactions with your team members, or maybe in your social interactions. So really think about, how have I demonstrated my thinking skills in opportunities that I've been presented in the workplace? So just before we open it up for questions to you, I wanted to close with just saying I hope that these tips that I've shared with you have given you something to consider, to think about, because how you work through those tips will demonstrate how you handle pressures, how you handle demands of the workplace, and your own personal life. Build in meaning. Keep your eye on the big picture and answer the question of why you do what you do. So Lynn, at this point, I'm going to turn it back to you to see if there are any questions that have been posed. Oh, I can't hear you, Lynn.
Oh my goodness, technology, I forgot I put myself on mute. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so we do have a question, and it's similar to a question I was going to ask you. I first of all want to say thank you, Landis, because you actually gave us information on some of the previous questions we've been asked. So that was really helpful to clarify some of that. And the question is, we all go through life in different phases and we have different lifestyle requirements. It is really overwhelming to change careers. And so the question is, it's like starting over again when you're changing careers. And so what are some of the first steps you would suggest that people take in order to kind of get on that path of change?
Mm-hmm. Great question. Be happy to, Lynn. So from my perspective, I would encourage three things. One is to reach out to people who are presently working in that particular area and find out from them what life is like post-COVID. Reach out to people, and it would start to build your network in that particular area. Secondly, look to see if there's any professional associations that are involved in that particular job area, job sector that you are looking to transition to see if you can reach out and talk to them. They're a great resource for being able to connect you with people who are working, but usually they're doing research in that particular field, and they can provide you with some background about what's happening with trends in that job area. And third is you've got to do some self-reflection. Why are you wanting to move into that new area? And if it's going to make more alignment, it's well worth the effort. And then start to look at highlighting, bringing out what those transfer skills are that you can bring from one position, one area into another area. Employers used to be that if you didn't work in a particular job, they wouldn't look at even entertaining you for transition. But that's not the case anymore. In the workplace we're dealing with now, people are looking for business experience. And they want to see what experience you've had in transitioning and bringing that business experience into the workplace. One quick example I can give is I work with some people in the not-for-profit industry, and they certainly are looking for people who have had business experience for not-for-profit organizations, and then bringing those people into their not-for-profit world, because quite often not-for-profit is really driven about passion, about social responsibility, and they still need to operate as a business. So bringing people in with that exposure and with that experience is something that they're looking for.
Oh, that's perfect. It leads into our next question that I have here. The industries that interest me are social, have social issues. My passion is about podcasts struggling for it to make money. Also, industries are health, wellness, environment, and recycling. Do I just find companies that align with these interests and then contact them and start a conversation? Or, how do I go about finding out all of the possibilities that are available?
Mm-hmm. You can approach this in many different ways. So I'm just going to offer two or three. I'll try to use very different ones so that you can see where I might approach something like this. So I would certainly look for the Chamber of Commerce of the area that you are looking to find a job. Start there, and they will be able to provide you with at least some company names that are in that particular industry. Then you can start to do research online about those organizations. And then you can start to check your own LinkedIn group and see if you've got any contacts in that particular area. Secondly, I would certainly start to broaden your network and to look at different groups that you can join in that particular social area. It's by participating in those particular opportunities that you will have exposure. And then you can certainly reach out following the event or having maybe read an article that maybe someone published. You can certainly reach out and have conversation at that point. Third is to let your existing network know you're interested in these particular areas. Your network is usually a great resource for, you never know who they know. It really is a small world. And so use that. Don't ever do this in isolation. Another area that maybe you haven't thought about is agencies. Agencies are always involved in recruiting in different sectors. Very few of them focus on all sectors because it's just too much. So I would encourage you to reach out to some of those agencies to see if they work in that sector that you are interested in. And then start to have conversation with their resources to get some more information. Third is reach out to post-secondary institutions and see if you can talk to some instructors, faculty that are presently working, teaching in that area, and they quite often are a good resource. They can connect you with different people in industry that you can have conversation. For example, in the post-secondary that I work in, we have an advisory group, and so those are people in industry. And so when people reach out to me, then I can connect them with those industry folks, and it's a place to start. Not saying there's always a connection, but it is a place to start, and then you can go from there. So those are kind of three areas that I would encourage people to think about. Volunteering is the last one that I wanted to talk about. If you're interested and passionate about an area, start to volunteer in that area. Because again, you never know who's volunteering there as well.
Right, right. Excellent. Great advice. And certainly I want to throw out another, if someone's interested in a not-for-profit type of organization, the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations. I imagine Edmonton would also have one. It's called CCVO. And they have a list of members, and there are lots of organizations that we might not have heard of that you could research there. So thank you. So I have networking is not always easy, especially when I run out of topics to share with my network. Is there any tips to keep in touch with my network in those downtimes? And I would also add not just network, but even your references that you are going to be approaching. How do you stay in touch and keep current with people?
It's great. Great question. From my experience over my years in working, we quite often drop this piece. We're engaged in it when we do job search, and then all of a sudden we get too busy and we don't focus on maintaining those connections. So I would like to share maybe a couple of ideas with the folks listening. One is look for reasons. Be purposeful. Look for reasons to reach out to that network or your references. Don't just reach out to people when you're looking for work. Reach out throughout your career. And if you've been to, maybe you listened to a podcast that you thought was great, share that with people who you think might be interested in that. It works both ways. It's not just you getting information. Secondly, look for events that you can attend. Right now, most of them are virtual, but invite someone to go with you so that after the event, you can have conversation about the event, about what you heard, what you saw. And then that can quite often lead to new opportunities. Third is to share in your LinkedIn. Get active in that LinkedIn and to share your research findings, share in possible volunteer opportunities with people who are on that. I always am pleased when I have people who are applying for work throughout my career that I was a senior leader, and individuals reach out to me with additional ideas of things that you might want to try as you're integrating culture into your organization, or a personal development opportunity that maybe they think I might be interested in. It's part of that sharing, and it's showing that you are open to change. a side effect of this, or a side result of this, is that you can develop your communication skills much better this way. It's you showing your initiative and your adaptability in coming up with other ways that other people who you value might get some benefit out of resources. I don't hesitate also in reaching out for a conversation. Virtual, telephone,
Right.
coffee, whatever it is reach out. You'd be surprised at how many people are just craving right now those conversations.
Mm-hmm. So sending a simple email saying, "Hey, how are you coping?" During
Exactly.
this COVID. Yes, nothing great.
And
Thank you so much.
I'm going to add just one more thing to that, Lynn. Sorry to interrupt. Is being genuine. Don't ask somebody how you doing and then move on to something else. Really be focused, be purposeful, and then comment after they have shared how they're really doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This presentation has been very informative, and so I thank you for taking the time and sharing your knowledge and expertise with us. That was great. I do want to mention to our audience that you will be able to pick up the PowerPoint presentation at the Talent Pool webinar resource page, which also will have that the resource list that we mentioned earlier. It will be on the same page, and you will find that in our link in the question and answer period. So thank you. Thank you very much. So a reminder to the participants that there will be a poll question to be answered, and we are going to draw the name of one person at the end who has the correct answer. They'll be contacted by mail, so you'll put your answer in, you'll put your name, and you'll put your email, please. We've previously drawn a name and they didn't have their email, so I didn't win it. I'm joking about that. So next, I do want to mention that if you need any help with your resume or your job search, the Alberta government offers a free, it's a workshop offered over a week, it's not full time, that you can attend and gain information. You can have your resume critiqued by the facilitator, and I happen to run some of them, so I think it's a really good thing. But that information will be available for you. And then I want to just talk about what's going to take place next month. It is October 18th. And here's my little selling point. The only certainty in life is uncertainty. Being without work can feel scary and stressful. However, having a financial plan in place can help minimize the impact. So on August 18th, our guest speaker will be from Money Mentors, and they will provide some financial tips and resources for dealing with unemployment. Topics will include budgeting, managing debt on a reduced income, and dealing with creditors. So come learn all the tips and strategies you need to survive and thrive after being laid off. And just a reminder that if you've registered for these sessions, you don't need to re-register. You'll get an email of information, and you will automatically be able to just click in and attend. So I'd like to just end by thanking our panelists, Doug, Debbie, and Pat, and certainly our presenter, Landis. Thank you so much for helping us understand how can we face this new world of work that we're kind of being forced to join after COVID and all of the changes that take place. I do want to thank again our sponsors, the Government of Alberta, Tribe, who is doing all this background work with our technology to make this happen, and then again the Talent Pool team. They work so hard to find great speakers such as Landis and really put together a program that I think really adds great value. So I've learned a lot of new things. I've walked away feeling like this has been a really great use of my time, and I hope you also have. So I want to wish you well. Thank you for attending, and I hope you enjoy your day. Take care.